Welcome to Philly Fortune Talks with your host, Jake Penny, where the city's brightest minds share the secrets behind their success. Are you ready to be inspired?
What does it mean to find true happiness, especially as a high achiever? Today, we dive deep into this question with Mike Duffy, a seasoned entrepreneur with over 20 years of experience. As someone who has dedicated his life to studying happiness, Mike brings a wealth of insight into what it takes to find joy, purpose, and fulfillment in both personal and professional life. Join us as we explore Mike's journey, his discoveries, and how high achievers can balance success with genuine happiness. Mike, it's a pleasure to have you on Philly Fortune Talks today.
Hey, great to be here. Thanks for having me.
So, Mike, you've dedicated your career to studying happiness, especially for high achievers. What kind of inspired you to focus on this aspect of happiness?
Yeah, I crashed, is the short answer. So, really, it's been the last 8 years that I've really been intensely studying happiness. Before then, I was high earning W-2. I was a corporate executive and did what you were supposed to do and got to VP C level of a Fortune 100, flying all over the world on private jets and saying, this is just not me. There's
Mm.
just something missing here. And the way it caught up for me was actually addiction. That in order to fit in the corporate environment, what became just a benign nightly cocktail grabbed a hold of me and became something
Oh,
that I was no longer in control of. So I went to rehab at age 50, and that completely transformed my life. It started this process of really saying, wow, I followed all the rules of what people told me to be happy, and it didn't work. So what's the answer? And that's when I really started my journey of trying to unpack that because I needed it. I need it for myself.
so why do you think high achievers um who seemingly have it all often like struggle with finding genuine happiness, purpose, or we've talked many of times about my experience of, not being content or satisfied with, achievements that should be
Right.
recognized.
Right. Right. Well, for many entrepreneurs, it goes back to trauma, goes back to childhood trauma. And I think in the last really 10 years, we've really gained an understanding of how trauma, big T trauma, you lost a limb, you were in a war zone, or little T trauma, you were bullied, you were neglected. We're getting much more awareness of how that affects us throughout our lives. And in my data, when I look at high achievers and entrepreneurs, 91% report some level of trauma. That's versus 70% of the general population. So entrepreneurs, high achievers are more likely to have experienced childhood trauma. And when you encounter that trauma, you can go a couple ways. You can go down and you can become a victim. Um, or what high achievers do is they use that as rocket fuel. They say, I'm going to prove to you and to myself that I'm worthy. And so the achievement is medicine. And one of the really interesting things that happens, I'm a coach, so a lot of my clients come to me very successful and they had that hole, the same hole that I had. And they said, well, why is this? And being able to really and I'd say that the two things from my research for a punchline for high achievers is balancing two skill sets, two ways of being. One is to be able to live in serenity, to be able to live comfortable in your own skin, um, to have the tools that when life gets turbulent, when your mind gets turbulent, you're able to quiet it down. We'll call that serenity. That's a whole skill set, a lot of tools there, but that's not enough. In the ancient wisdom from which I based my research, there's also achievement. We are mission creatures as human beings. We're purpose creatures. We need to get stuff done. Probably more so, even more so men than women, but humans as a whole. And so achievement is the second piece. What is my purpose? What is my mission? Highly statistically significant, living in your zone of genius can be something that really increases your happiness. So what I do personally is I really try and hone my skill set of how can I be the best achiever possible, but how can I also bring online all of these tools to be able to ground myself, to be serene, to be a better husband, a better dad, better brother. Last thing I'll say is, have you ever been in a Mini Cooper?
I have not, no.
Okay. So if you're running a Mini Cooper, first thing you'll notice is the dashboard. Dashboard is nuts. In the center of the dashboard is this huge speedometer, dominates the entire interior of the car. That that dial is how most of us look at our careers.
Hmm.
When I think about happiness, particularly as a man, how's my career going? And so we focus on that one big dial. But if you look over at the rest of the console, there's lots of other dials. And one of the opportunities is to say, I've got a lot of purposes in my life. My purpose as a high achiever, as an entrepreneur, as a business person, et cetera. Yeah, that's really important. But there's lots of other purposes in life that we need to dial up in order to have balance.
So what does it look like for, you said an individual living in their zone of genius?
Yeah. Well, the first thing is, let's define the term. So two key terms, zone of excellence and zone of genius. So zone of excellence is stuff that you can be excellent at. And there's an old adage, work flows to the competent. If you're competent and you can be excellent, you're probably going to get a lot of things that are piling up on your plate that flow to you. That becomes a real challenge. Because your zone of genius are what are those things that you are just particularly talented at that get you into a flow state, that fire you up. You know it when you tap into something that really, really is good for you. You lose track of time. Those are all indicators of zone of genius. And one of the important things to do is to really look at your life and say, how much time am I spending in my zone of genius? Those things that make me uniquely skilled. And once you can, and that can be as simple as just a journaling exercise of when do I lose track of time? When I'm doing things, what are those activities? What do I like to do more than anything else? Just spend some time really, what am I really good at? There's a tool called the Ikigai I can also recommend, which you can find various forms of, which is answering four questions to find your purpose. Um, and so that if you go to the Ikigai Ikigai and look at the tools there, then you can find questions to kind of do that discovery yourself, to try and discover your zone of genius. So that's step one is who am I? What's my zone of genius? Number two is really getting strategic about your calendar, and really freezing time in your calendar to be in that zone.
Hmm.
That can range from simply, I'm going to spend an hour a day in my zone of genius and I'm going to dedicate it and I'm going to firewall it off and I'm just going to do those activities. It could be time tracking where you go back over the last 2 weeks and really say, where do I spend all my time? And look for those things that are, who not howable. They're not in your zone of genius. You want them off your plate. They still need to be done, but they need to be put with a safe pair of hands. So going to the task level of all the things I'm doing, and almost two columns. Column A, what's my zone of genius? I want to do this and more of it. And what's column B? Here's all the stuff that I can do, I don't want to do, I shouldn't be doing. And then that becomes automated, get rid of it, delegate it, etc.
What have been some of the most, surprising finds in your study of happiness over the years?
Um, I'd say great question. I'd say the first thing was achievement. You think about these, old sages and they seem like really mellow and chill. Well, the Buddha was not a chill person. He started off that way, but in order to get his message out there, he really had to summon up an incredible amount of energy. And what he did after his enlightenment is he spent the last 30 years traversing India carrying his message. He ordained thousands of monks. He blew up the caste system. He created this incredible spiritual program that, billions of people have experienced. So the Buddha talks about both serenity and achievement. He talks about really giving your all from your gifts. And that was surprising to me. I hadn't seen that. So that was the first thing. Achievement is still really, really important. Trauma really surprised me, how much trauma really affects people throughout the totality of their lives. And it took, I had to get really honest and take off kind of the what I want to say, the mask. Um, because, I had little T traumas growing up, and I said, that was just part of growing up. You get over it, you learn from it. It's adversity, you move on. Um, Really being able to trace back when is it still affecting you is a really important question. And I found out that it's still affecting me.
Mm.
And one good tell on whether there's something deeper you need to be working at is I look at things at two levels. The first level I'll call the X's and O's, kind of like football. Do this, do that, then do X. It's about building knowledge, building skills, following processes. Let's say you want to get into a new line of work, you want to get into commercial real estate. Well, you go and you build a whole heck of a lot of knowledge about how to do that. Let's say that, like you're doing with podcasting or social, I want to get out there and have a presence. Well, you figure out everything you need to do and you go after it, and everything's great. Well, what happens if you're blocked? What happens if, even though you're really trying to get after something, you can't make progress and you don't know why? That can be a real tell that there's something deeper operating, something about your self-worth, something about your fears, typically coming from early childhood or something that you did throughout your life. So I would say that that's something to watch for, something that's really important to you, and you can't make progress at the X's and O's level, then the answer is likely deeper.
Okay. So like you talked about a little bit like achievement and success, happiness. How do you differentiate like the pursuit of happiness from the pursuit of success, and how can they kind of like coexist together?
Hmm. Yeah, it's a great question. So I'd say the first thing that jumps to mind is when is happiness? When does happiness occur? And the really important thing to realize is that the happiness only occurs in the now. We only have happiness in the present. Now we can think back to good times in the past and we can bring them forward and reflect on them. Well, we're still bringing them into the now. Happiness does not occur in the future. We do things in the future that we think are going to give us future happiness, but concentrating solely on the future and living in the future, that's not where happiness lives. So I think the real Zen opportunity for high achievers is to really live in the now. Live in the now, but balanced with a healthy dose of future and past. What I mean by that is, obviously we need to be in the future to plan, to strategize, to make things happen. But then we experience some success. Say we have, a plan that we're enacting and it's going well. What's our mind state likely to be? Still on the future. Well, I've got this and I got to do this and I got to do this. The opportunity is to say, for every win, I'm just going to stop, or every good feeling, everything that's good in life, stop. Stop yourself from going into the future and going into the past. Be in that moment. Recognize it. Our brains are constructed in a way that it's very hard for us to stay in the now. But in my data, it's really high correlated with happiness. It's the time frame for happiness. So as you're on your success journey, live in the gain. There's a great book called The Gap in the Gain by um, Benjamin Hardy, and I forget the co-author, that said that, and it's a fantastic read. I haven't met an entrepreneur yet that didn't enjoy it. The way he describes it is, we live in a gap, which is where we are now in the present and where we hope to be somewhere in the future. And we're constantly monitoring that gap. I'm not there yet. I'm not there yet. It makes us unhappy. Their argument, which I think is really sound, is to also live in the gain, to say, where was I and where am
Hmm.
I now? And really, really spend some time with gratitude for that. Great journaling exercise. What have I achieved? What can I be proud of that I've done in my lifetime, last 6 months, last year? Everyone has successes, but we bypass those or we give them short shrift, and we're on to the next thing. Stop. You could still get on to the next thing, but stop yourself and say, in this moment, with this win, I'm really going to feel it. And when I mean feel it, I also mean breathing into your body, feeling just warmth, really letting yourself feel all the feels around that. And then go on. It doesn't need to be, 24 hours worth of rapture. I'm just suggesting brief intervals where you catch yourself, stop, say, wow, I'm really appreciative for XYZ that just happened, really feel it, and then move on. That in and of itself makes a big difference.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree with that. Actually, like bringing yourself back to like, hey, let's experience this, let's feel this, instead of, things I've experienced is like, all right, we've accomplished this. What's next? Constantly thinking in the
Correct.
future of, well, what can we do now? That's over with. Well, no, it's something that you should celebrate and be happy about, and you overcome that challenge to be able to get to that successful point.
Absolutely. Yep.
How can like individuals strike a balance or integration between ambition and contentment, ensuring they don't, sacrifice happiness for success?
Ah, that's the art. Um,
Yeah, it is.
That is truly the art. Um, I'm going to read the quote that the Buddha talked about with achievement, by the way, just to frame the answer. The Buddha is always talking about contentment and peace and suffering, etc. Well, here he says, I shall not give up my effort until I achieve the highest level, which can be won by human ability, human effort, and human action.
Mm.
That's a strong statement. You could put, self-help, put that on a wall. That's the Buddha. So it is about finding what are your abilities? What do we talked about zone of genius. Um, so once you have that, then putting the effort against it, putting the action against it. Those are all the facets that the Buddha is talking about. So that's all well and good. By the way, we all, want to grow our wealth. We all want to make money, but service to others is a really powerful purpose, particularly as we get older in the second mountain of life, as some call it. The drive towards service becomes really important. And I'll go back to, ambition. Um, and ambition to me seems like a singular journey, that it's me and my vision for myself. And ambition doesn't typically include a team. Success typically does. Most of us tap into other people in order to be successful. So the ambition can be, your personal North Star of what you want to achieve, and it can be all to the good. Um, it's why we all get up in the morning to get excited about achieving something and bring our gifts to the world. So that's a healthy use of ambition. Where I think ambition gets a little dangerous is when it becomes just about me, when it's not about others, when it's not in service to others, or when it's really short-sighted. As we talked about, you can just run so hard after something that you forget to live life. You forget to look at all these other facets of your life and take the opportunity to maximize them. So I don't think it's in essence an unhealthy thing in and of itself, but it can be if it's really too self-centered and and if it's imbalanced, I think.
Yeah, I mean that's why you ask like a lot of like, you know, high achievers or business owners, you know, people that take their companies public, and they look back and they're like, oh man, I made all this money, had all these nice things, but I wish I enjoyed family time, experienced
Yeah.
events, or, just spent more time with life instead of focusing on money.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I'm just going to read something off on that point. There's been some books put out from hospice nurses, or one in particular called Regrets of the Dying. Have you ever heard of it?
I have not, but that's probably some awesome wisdom in there.
Isn't it? Yeah, it's from people sitting around people that are dying and hearing what they had to say at the end of their lives.
Wow.
And these are some consistent themes. I'll just read them off. There are five themes that people talked about as they died that they regretted. Number one, I wish I'd had the courage to live a life true to myself, not the life others expected of me. That's why I think it's really important to get after your gifts. What does being true to yourself mean? Understanding yourself, understanding your gifts, understanding your shortcomings too, but living in the courage of your unique gifts. I mean, Jake, you're a special snowflake. So am I. We're different. Everyone has some unique gifts to bring the world. So number one, bring that to the number two to the world. Number two, I wish I hadn't worked so hard. How about that one?
Sounds like everybody.
Yeah. Number three, I wish I'd had the courage to express my feelings. Um, Feelings are a real opportunity area for most people, particularly
Yeah.
men. Men are about on my diagnostic, they're about a 3 out of 5 on their ability to experience and communicate their feelings. Women are about a 4 out of 5. But when you talk to someone that's a 5 out of 5, they're different. They're people that just feel comfortable in their own skin. They've learned to show up as themselves, and they've learned to not be afraid of feelings, either the feelings that they're experiencing or they experience from others. Um, Number four, I wish I had stayed in touch with my friends. Super important. Friendships. Harvard has a study that's been running for over 70 years now, a longitudinal study on happiness. Longitudinal means they're just tracking people over years and years and years. So it's a really cool study design. Number one driver of happiness, according to Harvard, was relationships and particularly friendships. So as you go after your life and your ambition, don't forget, it's the individuals along the journey that really make it most sweet. So investing in friendships, cultivate, either finding new ones or cultivating existing ones, or new or existing ones. And then lastly, the last regret of the dying, I wish that I had let myself be happier. And that's really what we're talking about. So a simple recipe, if I had to just net it out, really know your strengths, know who you are, spend some time journaling on what those things are, divide the zone of genius versus all the other stuff you do and take action. Um, so that's one piece. Living in your zone of genius will start to make you happier. Um, Stay in the now as much as you can. Things that will help you to stay in the now include practices we all know about, like meditation, journaling, contemplation is another one where you read something really deep and you just really spend some time thinking about it. Those are things that have been proven to help us be happier, um, and help us to live in the now. So those are just some thoughts. So regrets of the dying. It's good things to be aware of.
Do you believe happiness should be a topic that's like taught in our culture, whether that's school or the workplace? If so, how would you incorporate it?
Great question. So it's it's pretty amazing the negativity of the human condition. What I mean by that is that we all have this inner critic inside that's constantly going, and we don't talk about it too much. Scientists say that we have up to 80,000 thoughts a day. 80% are negative, 95% are repetitive. It's a tough neighborhood up there. And so we're kind of predisposed to not be happy. Our neural programming keeps us in the future and in the past, not in the now. Um, as another example, so we kind of have to fight our programming as humans in order to be happy. Should that be instructed, and that should that be something that people are led and trained to do? Absolutely. Just because I think the odds are against us when it comes to happiness. Our natural state, I'm going to say, is not to be happy.
Hmm.
Our natural state, and we get this from our survival wiring, you know,
Survival, yeah.
is I need more food, I need more shelter, I got to keep going, I got to get more stuff. And the people that did that 200,000 years ago were more likely to select for survival. That's one of the theories on why are we so on edge all the time? Why can't we just be? Why can't we just be, chill out? Well, those guys 200,000 years ago, they didn't survive to pass their genes on. So I do think that we it's something that people should be really serious about. What is my happiness strategy? And is it good or is it corrupt? Am I even aware of what it is? Am I putting the right bets in the right places? So yeah, I think it's really hard to just figure it out yourself. How would I educate it? That's a great question. I think I I really like starting with ancient wisdom because it's been preserved for so long for a reason. If you start to tunnel at it from a modern perspective, there's just so much that it's
Mhm.
difficult to know what to teach. So I liked building up from what's been known to be true for thousands of years. So exposure to, the great sages and what they've said about, humans have been studying human psychology for those 200,000 years, so there's an amazing amount of stuff that's available out there that we've known for thousands of years that we can apply. So my bias would be start there. And then last thing I would say is in any learning for adult learning, getting experiential. What I mean by that is get people talking, get people moving, get people applying it to their life. So introduce some concepts and then get right to what does this mean for you? How do you apply it to your life? And get people talking about it and then get people actually putting it into action. Those are some of the things I would look for to train it.
And like, on that topic of like common barriers of happiness, um, what are some of them that you've identified through your studies? And like, what are some kind of maybe like practices or like training mechanisms, if you would call it, to handle them?
Okay. There's a lot I could say there, but I'll be really simple. So I'd say the very first thing is that we don't prioritize. I was going to say we don't prioritize our happiness. That's not correct. In essence, we're constantly trying to do a bunch of things that we think are going to make us happy.
Hmm.
Um, Prioritizing what's real, what is really going to move the needle for us. Things like relationships, things like service, etc. Um, so that I think is the first barrier is not even being aware of it, just running along our lives, saying and not even understanding where our desires came from. So saying what is spending some time journaling, what's really going to make me happy? What's most important to me in life? Reading about, things like regrets of the dying can help shape that. Um, so that's one of the biggest barriers, I think, is we're just unconscious of our happiness strategy. And I hate to say it, but most of our happiness strategies are corrupt. They're not effective. Um, and then once the second thing I would say is once you have a sense of something that's going to make you happy, that's new for you that you really have to develop, go find the resources in order to help you. You can make a lot of progress by yourself, but it's such an accelerator to have a coach, to have a therapist, to have close friends with some expertise that can help you. Um, so don't stop. We tend to have a tendency to think, particularly in the spiritual or happiness domain, I'm going to take one action and then boom, I'm good. That's not how it works. It can take months or years of working on a practice to really get it from head to heart, to really have it. So, number one, look at your strategy, just like you do in the business, and really start to get curious about it. What's most important to me to drive my happiness? How do I do more of those things? Um, and then stay after it long enough that you really start to see some lift.
So, Mike, you have your own consulting, coaching services. How do you help individuals who feel they are stuck in like a cycle of constant striving, unable to find fulfillment?
Mhm.
How do you go about helping those individuals, which is a lot of people?
It is. It is. I I think I start with really understanding who you are. At the Oracle of Delphi, thousands of years ago, they had inscribed in stone, they chipped away and it said, "Know thyself." That's really hard to do uh, because it's so complicated up there. So I go through a very structured process where we really determine who are you and what are your gifts.
Mm.
We go through personality tests, feedback from those around you. We go through the best experiences of your life, the worst experiences of your life. We really try and say, let's simplify. Who in the heck are you? From that, what are your greatest opportunities? Where are your greatest leverage points to be happier? And then we go into a routine of, okay, now let's get that going and let's reinforce it and let's get enough reps over enough period of time so that it actually sticks. So that in a nutshell is what I do. And to answer your question, when we can ground ourselves in really who we are and feel really good about our strengths, really clear on our shortcomings, really clear on our leverage points, not a million things, but the few things that we can do that are going to make a difference. And if we really put the effort in and if we get accountability and support to make progress, it's a wonderful recipe for getting there.
Yeah. Yeah, I bet. I mean, a lot of people need help with that. I mean, you've helped me see a better version of how to get through that for myself in the past. Um, but as we wrap this up, Mike, what, for people that want to learn like more about you, your consulting, your culture, your coaching, on this whole aspect of happiness, fulfillment, purpose, everything like that, what's the best place for them to go to learn more?
Yeah, the best place to go is my website, venwisdom.com. That's VENN wisdom.com. And there you can see what I do. You can take the happiness diagnostic, which has been completed by over 300 people, 100 of whom are high achievers. So really great data set. And when you start that process, if you click on that diagnostic and take it, I will send you personalized findings that start you on your journey to determine where you could be happier.
Awesome, Mike. Well, I appreciate your deep wisdom for the audience, and it was a pleasure having you on Philly Fortune Talks today.
That was great, Jake. Great questions, by the way. You're nailing it.
Thank you.
Thanks for tuning in to Philly Fortune Talks with Jake Penny. Inspired to share your success story? Visit phillyfortunetalks.com/guest and let's inspire together.